First off, thank you all for being here. It's an opportunity to keep some money in your pocket at all times. I mean, it's always a wonderful thing. We want to thank you for coming to I Thrive Christian Church. You're always welcome. If you're not a member, you're certainly always welcome to come. Our pastor, Andre Landers, would love to have you. Lady E, they're wonderful, wonderful people. It's a great word here. And if you know someone that needs a church home, certainly you can let them know they can come and feel welcomed here. Okay, let us go before the Lord in prayer. Father God, you are great. You are mighty. You are awesome in all your ways. We are so thankful that you have chosen us to be here during this time in life. We thank you, Lord God, that Jesus is our Lord. He's our Savior. And without him, we are nothing. Thank you for allowing the Holy Spirit to speak to us, through us, lead and guide us into all truth. Father, we thank you, God, for this moment in time that we are here to receive wisdom and understanding. Your word says, in all thy getting, get understanding. And so we are here to get an understanding of what it is we are to do with the blessings that you give us. Thank you, God. We are tithers. We give offering. We pay our bills. We take care of business. We do what you have called us to do. And here is another opportunity to learn and understand and grow in what you have for us to do. Give wisdom. Lay your powerful hand upon those who will present today. Give them the right words. Give them the understanding to speak to your people that we will know what to do with what you give us. In Christ Jesus' name, amen.
I always like to see who we have in the room. How many of you are residents of Clayton County? Henry County? Fayette? Cobb? DeKalb? Have I missed any counties? Fulton County. Awesome. So we have a mixture. And this is not formal presentation style. You have questions. We are here to answer your questions. If I don't have the answer, or the commissioner or the tax appraiser doesn't have the answer, we'll get it for you or direct you to the appropriate person or department. The key thing here I want you all to leave here is having an insight of understanding your property taxes and also your value, because you get the tax notice is based on your value, okay? So let's get started. First slide, you're going to hear me tell people turn the slide because they are controlling the slides in the back, so just ignore me a little bit, guys. Next slide. This session is how property taxes are calculated. We're going to cover that, role of the tax assessor, understanding your assessment notice, appeal timelines. Also, we're going to touch on Senate Bill 566, tax commissioner's responsibilities, Senate Bill 33, also House Bill 1000, the escrow awareness. Next slide. Our tax assessor's office, what do they do? What is their role? We have Mr. Emmett George from Chief Tax Appraiser from Clayton County with us today. He's going to answer those questions for you. Next slide. Also, we have with us, what does the tax commissioner does? We have with us Mr. Michael Harris. He's Henry County Tax Commissioner. They have two different jobs, and they'll tell you quickly, please don't mix them up. Next slide. Understanding property tax. So we want to make sure we all understand what we are here for. Property taxes are taxes charged on real estate based on the value of the property, the assessment value, the millage rate, which will be different based on your county location, where you live, any exemption or credit you may be receiving as well. All that is encompassed. What do they do? A lot of people say, where my money go? That's always the question. Of course, you have police and fire services, public schools, road, and also you have infrastructure. So when it comes down to that, I always tell people, you need to go to your commissioner meeting. Look at the budget. It's budget time. And have an understanding of how your money is allocated. Next slide. I wanted to just give you a snapshot before Chief Appraiser, Mr. George, comes up, pretty much we know we have gone through a cycle, and this really is, I can't say a year, really it's been a couple years now as far as home value is concerned. Depends on where you live. Overall, this is encompassing single-family condos and townhomes, resale, and new construction. So we could see Clayton County, Henry County had a little dip. DeKalb, Fayette, Fulton, and Cobb had a little increase. But I would preface this by still saying, depends on your community. You can live in Henry County and be down by the racetrack road. Your value may be totally different if you live closer to the square. But overall, this gives you an idea of what's going on in the market. Right now, we are pretty much stable. The average days on market, if someone is trying to sell their home in this Southern Crescent corridor, and when I say Southern Crescent corridor, you're talking about Henry, Clayton, Fayette, a little part of South Fulton, we count that, and a little part of DeKalb. We're on the south side. So the average days on market is running about 63 if someone is looking to sell. If someone is even looking to buy, it's taking a buyer about 45 days to find the ideal home for them. So we all are sitting pretty much at a stable point right now. Right now they're looking at budget, millage rate, so all those things are going to go into play when it comes to your notice. And next up, we're going to have Mr. George is going to come up. You can pull up Mr. George slide, please. And he's going to talk to you about what does a chief tax appraiser does. He's the man who's talking about the value. So don't all jump on him.
Good morning or good afternoon. And so a little bit before I've got just a quick presentation. I'm going to go over some stuff and some changes that I want everyone to really be aware of, legislative changes that have kind of changed everything. But a little bit about me real quick. I am a lifelong Clayton County resident. We moved here when I was 3 months old. And I was born in DeKalb County, so had been a far move. I am from basically right from where my office sits in downtown Jonesboro. Within about 2 miles, you can touch all my educational points. Arnold Elementary, the real Jonesboro Middle School before they moved it, the real Jonesboro High School before they renovated it, and Clayton State. So, like I said, I'm not just someone up here that you think is your enemy. I am someone who's in this community. I invested in this community. I have to answer to my mom and, well, my mom's passed now, my mom and dad, much less to the other citizens of this county. I've actually got to answer to them also. So to know where I'm coming from on that. So for everybody here that was from Clayton County, I'm sorry, I'm going to get again because I didn't turn around good. I'm Clayton County. Okay. So understand, this is, and while I'm talking about that, I'm going to talk about some things for all the counties to understand on some of these legislative changes. But just want to give you a little background as far as, I'm just not somebody that showed up one day and is going to be gone in another day or two. I got grandkids and they're going to be in schools here and everything like that for a while. So let me go ahead and get started and just on a few things here about us, if you don't mind. Okay, perfect. So the tax assessors, our goal or our job is to assess or value all property in the state every year. We don't do this for any purposes other than this is state law. It's mandated. There's a whole code section. It's a big old book. And we are mandated every year. 159 counties are all required to do this every year. Value every piece of property that's both real, which is your houses, your businesses. I always tell that people that's building in dirt. And also personal property. Personal property is business assets, airplanes, boats, different things like that. So there's two different kinds of properties when we're talking about that. But our office also, so if you buy or sell your home or update your deed, it goes through and gets recorded down at the Clerk of Superior Court's office. then it actually gets sent to my office, and we update all the public records that you see online as far as ownership changes. So next slide, please. I'm not good with microphones, sorry, y'all. So every year, the valuations we do starts the process of everything else. So the basic understanding of the flow of taxes and things like that, you have the valuation of property, and you're taxed at 40% of that. You then have county budgets. Digest divided by the budget comes up with a millage rate. So everybody wants to know millage rate's a tax rate, and a millage rate, everyone's going, what is it? It's actually just a very simple equation. It's the total digest of that taxing district, whether it's the county, if you live inside of a city limit, fire district, any of those different things that have different taxing districts. They all basically are the same formula to come up with that millage rate. The millage rate is decided on between finance in our county, creating with the budgets, and then information is all sent to the Board of Commissioners, and they decide and have hearings, and they'll probably happen here in a couple months in Clayton, as far as to the final millage rates every year. So once that millage rate is created, then in my county it's Commissioner Smith, but in Henry, Commissioner Harris here, will eventually get all that information, and that becomes what you eventually get and pay on your tax bill. But the start of it is my valuations, and we are required to by law. So just to kind of walk you through that part, and we'll go to the next slide, please. Assessment notices, they go out every year. They used to, many years ago, you only got it if there was a change in value or a change in ownership. After the markets crashed in, I think in 2011 or 12, I think it was 11, they started changing where everybody got a notice every year. This is your time to figure out if you wish to appeal your property. And by appealing your property, it's not about that I don't like the taxes. That's not what you can appeal. The appeal is for the value of the property. We are the assessors. We are nothing but valuators. So our job is to value the property based on the sales every year of each neighborhood, and I'll kind of get into that in just a little bit more in a minute. But every year you'll get a notice. This year it's changed, and I've got a copy of an example up here. I'll go through some stuff in a minute. But the biggest thing is when you get that notice, it will have a beginning and end date. And the beginning and end date, that 45 days is mandated by law. There isn't a grace period of 46. I forgot, something came up. The law is what it is, and it ends at 45 days. And it depends on, every county's different every year, depending on when they send them out. Henry, y'all got y'all's a few weeks ago. I think Fulton is sending theirs out this week. We are in the final stages and I'll go into the legislative changes in just a minute. But everybody's late this year because of Senate Bill 566. And it changed the way the notice looks completely. So we are actually in the final stages. We've just finished getting all the testing wrapped up, and we should be sending ours out hopefully in about 2 weeks. I will have something updated this week on the website and on communications, but the notices, when they go out, 45 days. That's just by law. And if you don't mind, next slide, please. So if you decide you disagree with the value of your property, I'm going to keep saying that, the value of your property, then you have that right. Every year, it's your home. You have the right as the owner to file an appeal. In our office, we make it pretty simple. You can come in, and we've got the appeal form to fill out. We've got an online link. This year, we're going to try to also have a QR code onto the notice. You can fax it in. You can mail it in. You can just simply write something on a piece of paper. I wish to appeal my property, reference your property, and as long as you sign it and get it to us inside that 45-day window, give us some contact information so we can reach out to you, then we're going to place you under appeal. We try to make it very simple. But once you place your property under appeal, the appraiser for your area, we've got 7 residential areas, 3 different commercial areas, but you're assigned, but based on the area you're assigned an appraiser. That appraiser is going to look over that appeal. They're going to see what they can do. They're going to get with you and get you the information, and you have the right to ask for the information that we're using every year. It states it on this notice that goes out, but I always let everybody know. The appraisers will send you that information. They'll go over that information. That's what they're there for. If there's something that can be worked out, there's a couple different ways. There's something just as simple as what we call a value agreement. That's where both parties decide on a value, settle it, you sign something, we end the appeal, we get it all taken care of, and we move on. Those value agreements are good for that year and 2 consecutive years after. I won't go into all the code sections and all that, but basically we call it a 299C freeze. There are some times where, I'm sorry, go back 1 second. There are times where, if you send us some information that we look and can verify, we may send what we call a corrective notice out, and you'll actually get another one that looks like this, but it has 30 days to reappeal if you still don't agree with that. But, if you have some kind of thing that we send in, we may send you a corrective notice. We call them a 30-day letter because you have 30 days to reappeal it. If for some reason the 2 sides cannot mutually come to something, or there just seems to be nothing that can be done, we have the Board of Equalization. The Board of Equalization is through the Clerk of Superior Court's office. They will then notify of a time and a date they would like to have. They're called hearings, but they're not in front of a judge. It's 3 citizens. They are appointed just like grand jury. You have to have the same qualifications. But you have a hearing, and then they listen to both sides, and then they make a rendering. You still, if you don't agree with that, you still have the right to go to Superior Court and things like that. But these are just some of the processes, and I'm speaking to most of the residential, since more than likely everybody hears more about that today. So those are some of your processes, and depending on time of appeal, they may be settled that same day. As we get things in and it gets into the end of the season, we're trying to work them as they come in. It may take a couple months and all that. It just depends on the number of appeals and all that. So it varies and all that, but there's times where they can be settled pretty quickly. And we'll go to the next slide. And I'm going to follow up. Don't think that this is, I'm going to come back through with a lot of stuff. I just want to kind of get some of the basics done before I say a few things. So Senate Bill 566 I referenced. This is a change in our code section that made many different changes, and there's a few others, and I'm sure Commissioner Harris is going to speak to a few in a minute and all that. It's changed a few things from his side of the house. There are some different things that go on there. We have to send in now for when we submit the Department of Revenue every year a digest. We have to submit them now a list of all homesteaded properties. We have to submit them some other things that go in along with that. And I've kind of noted on here in this slide, if anybody wants, they can reach out to Ms. Hudnall's team and all that. This slide is available for everybody. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So what I want to get into really is the changes of what's going on now. So last year, everyone kind of kept hearing about 581. I think in Henry County, everybody opted in, all municipalities. In Clayton County, only the city of Jonesboro opted in. Everyone else opted out. The opt-in, opt-outs were more about the options to be able to get into basically some other ways of sales tax allocations to help offset some of the changes. It allowed for some freeze or some different base year values and different things like that. Well, like I said, in Clayton County, only the city of Jonesboro did. So now, Senate Bill 33 that just got passed this year basically now comes back and mandates everybody is now basically opted back into the original 581 from last year. What House Bill 581 did last year was kind of replace, used to on the old notices, at the bottom you would have an estimate of what your taxes were going to be. And everyone seemed to, kind of know, what that was. Last year, it took that away, and it gave you something called estimated rollback millage rates. And if anybody can give me that definition, I got a prize I'll give you right now. I had to keep it on hand too. It's not something you deal with every day. So it was confusing. There was no other numbers. It just had a value and a millage rate, and that was it. So they decided this year, well, let's try it again. This is all through, your House of Representatives and Senate here in Georgia. And so what came out of it was House Bill 566, and 566 has now changed the notice completely. And basically, this is kind of the new format. Before, you had kind of basically the same stuff here, and then it would have said B over here, and then C right here, and you'd have had, this is where you would have seen like your estimate of taxes before and different things like that. So what's changed now is you still have your dates to appeal. You still have information about how to appeal. It'll have websites. Matter of fact, it's now listing both the tax assessors, but it's also listing tax commissioners' websites for the purposes of filing for homesteads and things like that. It's giving you all your different reasons of how to appeal. It's got still your property information as far as your addresses, your parcel numbers. It's got your last year's value, but what's different is on the old notices, you've always had a last year's value and this year's value, but you've also had your 40% value, what you're actually taxed on. And that may have been confusing over the years, and so you're no longer going to see that. You're just seeing the 100% values on here. So your 25 and your 26 values. If you have some people, if their property qualifies for conservation uses or other different types of exemptions, you may have other value here. But for the most part, you're just going to see a 25, 26, but it's your 100% value. You're no longer seeing the 40%. Where it starts getting into a little bit different now is after that. There's a box down here at the bottom over on the left side, and it's going to list whatever homestead exemptions or whatever exemptions you have qualified for. So if you currently carry in Clayton County an over 65 exemption, which gives you $10,000 off county and total school exemption and things like, it's going to list what that code and what that exemption is. Here's where I'm speaking to everybody. What's going to be different? That box right there says estimated tax savings. It's not. And I've got it here, and this, is something we're putting out for Clayton County. It is basically it's estimating the value of your exemption. So if you have a property without an exemption, you're not going to have anything here. If you have a regular, just basic exemption, it might just be a couple $100 there. It is an estimate of what your homestead is worth, and I've got a slide here in just a minute that'll kind of give an example. It is an estimate of what your homestead is worth versus not having that homestead. So it's what you're going to save by having a homestead exemption. And so by them labeling as an estimated tax savings, that's misleading. I'm worried that we're going to see that someone thinks their bill is going to be that much lower this year than last year, and when they get their bills, they're going to be a little ill. It's not. It's just what you're saving. So let's go to one of the next slides. So this is kind of what I was just talking about, different things. And you go ahead and go to the next slide. Where I've started with please in red is kind of where I want everyone to, that's what I just talked about. And for those who have gotten their notices and seen this, did you read the fine print down there at the bottom? Because it's telling you what I'm telling you now. And it's hard to notice, so I want to make sure it's highlighted. It's basically saying it's what your homestead is worth. I think the next slide is my example here. So what I did is just kind of put a basic numbers. If you have a $250,000 home with no exemptions, and let's say you paid $3,000, I'm just using round numbers. I'm not basing it on anything true and factual on that. But if you have a homestead exemption on that same $250,000 home, and you only have to pay $2,500, then what you're going to see on this is the $500. Does that seem to make a little sense? You know, it's telling you that homestead is saving you $500 if you didn't have the homestead. It's not a savings off of last year. It's not a true tax savings. It's an estimate of homesteaded value, the value of your homestead exemption. Next slide. I think you can go to the next. These are old notices. It was hard to read these. Go ahead and go through. I've got one more. I think it's just going to be our contact information after that. So before I answer any questions and all that, let me kind of speak back to the appeals. If you feel like your value is wrong, and understand we take the value in residential, I'll use that as my example. We've got 759 neighborhoods in Clayton County, residential neighborhoods. We look at the sales of each neighborhood. It's not an area, it's not a perimeter, it's not a 1 mile radius or anything like that. It's your deeded neighborhoods. And for those that don't live in deeded neighborhoods, then we have what we call scattered property neighborhoods. But for the most part, everybody is inside. And if you go by any new subdivision now, they've got a sign out front, XYZ neighborhood. The sales of that neighborhood are what we're using to either increase or decrease the market adjustment of each neighborhood each year. So it's not that a house sold 2 miles away for $1 million is going to make yours go up. It's also not going to be that a house sold for $2, it's not going to make it go down. What's going on in your immediate neighborhood? And when I say your immediate neighborhood, it's the drives, usually it's the roads you ride on to get to your house once you turn off of a main road. So that's where I want everyone to understand. It's when we say the market adjustments for your neighborhood, it's truly meaning your neighbors. What your neighbors are selling homes for. And in the last few years, I'll go ahead and address the last few years, we've had crazy markets. And we've had also crazy amounts of investors. And people tell me, well, investors are overinflating. I agree, they're trying to. But we also, over the last few years especially, as those sales have come through where we see it's either investor to investor and it looks skewed, or it's an investor purchase and it just seems out of whack. We're using the true more arm's length, what we see, I'll say mom and pop buying and selling to each other for as our baselines to see where those then other sales, these investor sales, and we may disqualify them so they don't penalize people. The other thing you'll see a lot of times is people tell me all the time, well, that house was renovated, mine's not. And if we've gotten the permits and gotten all that information, so here's how it adjusts in your neighborhood. You have, let's say every home's $225,000, but one just sold for $300,000. Well, that doesn't mean, oh gosh, my home's going up to $300,000 next year. That house was renovated. We do different things. We we change the effective age of the home. It's more like a newer home now because they've done a lot of renovations to it. So its depreciation schedule is a lot different now. So it increases that home's value. It doesn't. But when we look at a total ratio, and I'm not going to get down in the weeds of a sales ratio study and really get everyone out there today, but it may not skew that ratio now where we're basically not touching the neighborhood, even though that home sold for so much more because it was renovated. We're not trying to affect the non-renovated homes just because a renovated home sold for way more. We're trying to make sure we got what's going on with that home right, get that home's value right, and then look at the ratios of the rest of them in the neighborhood also. So mass appraisal versus a fee appraiser. I did fee for 15 years before I became a tax appraiser. Mass appraisal is a little bit different. Mass means, you know, I'm looking at the market of the neighborhood. I'm looking at the ratios of each neighborhood. So you're appraising multiple homes at one time, mass appraisal. So, you know, if you live in a 400 home neighborhood, I can't put 400 individual reports out there. I have to use kind of a ratio study that the Department of Revenue has. And we use that to apply then positive and negative, whichever way the market adjustments need to go. You know, over the last few years, we've probably seen a few more negatives come back, as Ms. Hudnall's information showed. You know, some of the markets are kind of self-correcting a little bit and leveling out. But the first thing I always ask, you know, people ask me, well, this and this and this, you know, you've jacked it up. It's not, you know, but that's also why I say you're allowed to ask for that data. Ask for it. We'll give it to you. And on our search engines, you could get it with a few clicks here and there, but we'll be more than glad to provide that information to you so you understand exactly what's going on and where we did. The last thing I'll state before I kind of answer some questions is the valuation is as of January 1 every year. So technically, I'm using the previous year's sales to establish the valuation for taxation. So this year's notice, while it will say 2026, is based on the 2025's values. And that's also important that if you're appealing it, we're talking about 2025 sales. 2026 sales will affect 2027. So technically, I'm always half a year behind when notices go out. But the things I always tell people, I said, the notice of assessment isn't meant to be combative or anything like that. An appeal is not anything that's supposed to be like that either. An appeal is your right to ask me a question. There's nothing wrong with that. I get that what this document eventually does is flow into something that comes out of your pocket, comes out of my pocket. I understand that. So I understand why there is, but I want it to be that it's an open conversation. The reason I'm talking like this and not really doing slides, it's an open conversation between my staff, yourself, anybody. It's the more we can inform and get informed. So I always tell people it's a two-way street. My staff knows this. It's a two-way street when you're appealing or when you just come in, and even whether you're not appealing. It's a two-way street that I want to hear what you got to tell me because you live in that house. You are, and technically, my subject matter expert on your home. Tell me what's going on in your house that I don't know. Then let's see if we can fix it. You know, if there's something that needs to be fixed, I'll do it. If there's not, I'll tell you why or what we can do or what other processes or what other alternatives you got. I'll be more than glad. It's never about that. I always tell people if the more we all communicate, the more I get information from cities and things like that when permits happen, the more information I get from here or there, but also the more information I provide out in instances like this, then we all can kind of know where we all are, get on the same page. We don't always have to agree on everything, but if we're on the same page, at least we're talking the same language, and that's all I want. And so, you know, and I can say this for the other counties. I'm not going to speak for any of them, but I know most of the chief appraisers in the metro area, and I would say that statement should hold true to all of them. I would stand my ground on that one. I would say, from what I know. So I could probably go on for hours, but everyone else wants to talk too. So I'd really love to answer any questions or anything for you. Yes, ma'am. Join me. So, all right, and I'm going to take that a step a little bit further. So just in case anyone didn't hear, she was asking if the valuations are affected by the amount of rental properties in the neighborhood. And I'm going to take it a step further. Let's say rental properties that are also not being taken care of, or vacant properties with grass this high and things like that. So the easiest way to answer that is, it is in an indirect way. And let me go into that in that, all right, so I told you, let's say I got 6 sales in a neighborhood, and they're all selling pretty tight in a range, whatever that range is. Every single one of those houses sold, somebody bought them driving past whatever you're telling me about, telling me whatever conditions are going on in your neighborhood. If all this is going on and it's truly going to hurt the market, then I'm going to see that the decrease in that subdivision in sales prices. They might ask for $250, but ain't no one going to pay $250 to live next to $200. And so that's where I'm going to see it. So whatever the buying and selling of the properties is telling me what's going on with, do those properties help, hurt, hinder, whatever. It's kind of like, I tell everybody when I say this, you tell me what that property does by what you buy and sell homes for. And I'm not talking directly, to each one that you're buying and selling each day, but I'm just saying in general, the sales kind of dictate some of that information. Now, there are some times where we get into some extreme circumstances of properties, and especially, so you get into a truly blighted home, and we go out and find it. We're going to kind of make note of what homes are immediately around it, that might be, and I'm just going to use, say, a house that was burned down. It's been set there for 4 years for whatever reason. No one's ever rebuilt it. It's still a shell. It should have been tore down, and all that. And we're going to make notes of all that so that there's usually never no marketable data for adjustments based on that. But it's something, as we know it, then as somebody comes in and wants to talk to us about it, well, then let's really hear some stuff. Let's talk to some of the things you've experienced by living, say, next to that, rats coming in, by your house. And it might be something we can talk to on that. But usually the best thing I tell everybody is, I used to do it when when I first started, and I was sitting, and my area was kind of the panhandle area of the county. People would come in and tell me, well, this house and this house is vacant, because back then we still had a lot of vacancies. Grass is this high. And one lady lived across the street, and I had actually a house on each side of this one property, and they sold for this. Now, they were just slightly below where maybe the rest of the market sells in the subdivision. If everything was selling for $200, they might have sold for $190. And so I had something that kind of could quantify that, had a little, bit of things. But a lot of times they're still selling for this, and some of them are selling right next to it. And, especially in the market for the last few years before we started leveling out, people just wanted to buy the house because before it went up. In this point, I'll tell you, especially the Clayton County citizens of this, right now, our values are still lower than all of our other neighboring counties around. You want to do a direct comparison to test me on that? The easiest thing I know is D.R. Horton's building in all of the counties right now. Go look at all the listings around the neighboring counties and see how much more they're selling them for than in ours. So I always tell people, well, I'm going to move. These taxes are ridiculous and all that. I understand, but if you're going to stay in Metro Atlanta, where else are you going to go and get the same value? The reason, to some degree, Clayton is still actually holding values really well. I know we saw a little dip in there across the generalization, but for the most part, I saw pretty more stable. But we were increasing for a long time just because our values were so low that you couldn't afford a property here, but I could get the property here for $100,000 less. So we had that, and so we're still holding true on that. I'm sorry, Ms. Hudden, did you raise your hand on it? Okay. Any other questions? So the question was, do you need comps from a real estate agent? First of all, the law on appeals states you can come in and file an appeal. The more data you provide us at that time, then that allows the appraiser to work through it more. You can go out there. There's so many different search engines out there. You know, you could bring in what you want. You can, you know, if you know somebody who can do all that, great. It's not a necessity, or maybe you want to file the appeal and ask us what we got. Come with any data you want me and my staff to know. That is what I always tell everybody. Whether it be sales, whether it be information like we just talked about with some situations. Tell me what I need to know of why you think your value is different. Not because you don't like the tax bill. Okay? It's still about the value. Tell me where the value's wrong.
Is there a situation whereby whatever my taxes are, and for it to go up if I'm appealing?
So the question was, if you, I cover it, could you appeal and end up going up? It's a rarity. So I went back and said that if you file an appeal and you do an agreement or a board of equalization hearing or things like that, they carry what we call 299C, 3-year freezes. And so during that time, the law now says that if you appeal during that time, you're subject to what the current fair market would be, not what you locked in at. So you could, and I've had people that, for whatever reason, know better. And, you know, I can advise and all that. I had a lady last year who ended up losing about $25,000 in value appeal because she kept going and all that, even though we were advising her, hey, you locked in, stay, you're good. But that would be about the only time. For the most part, no. Once my notice is established, that is my value for 2026. The Board of Equalization can go above, but the only time I've ever seen them do that in my instance is actually people who disagreed that they thought my value was low and actually wanted it higher. Now, a lot of people associate that with because they're getting ready to sell their house, they think that matters. Tax value versus what you can sell your house is two different things. The taxes, what I'm doing is I'm assessing it for taxes for that given year. It has no bearing on what you can sell your home for. So it should be somewhat in that range, don't get me wrong, but it has no bearing. So she had done a lot of things that we didn't know about on the house, and she needed that thing to be at 400 when we were at 300 because she was about to list it. Well, she didn't need to do that, but Board of Equalization, you know, she brought a lot of stuff and convinced them. That's on her. And I, you know, but for the most part, no, ma'am. What are the common? I always tell people, go on. You can go on and search your property on any of the county sites. You know, make sure your square footage is in that range. Make sure, you know, kind of the data that we have on there, you know, looks about right. Now, you know, square footage is a little bit subjective because everybody's going to pull a tape differently. If you've had an appraisal in the last few years or something, you know, kind of see. You're going to have I'll call it basically a 10% rule. When I did fee appraisal work, we pulled to the inch where, and we use outside perimeters, by the way, and so don't give me that your flooring company came in and you only need 1,400 square foot and I'm calling you 1,700. They're using inside flooring measurements. Standard, usually appraisers and things like that are pulling from the outside, your outside perimeter. We factor in, we know the walls are 3 and 3.5 plus the siding and all that other stuff, but that's just a universal to make it more where uniformity across appraisal square footages are the same. But look and see if it's in a range. You know, if staff needs to come out and kind of recheck some stuff or show you that sketch, and they'll be more than glad. But we're usually rounding down to the nearest foot, so we should be a little bit less than what's out there because we're rounding actually down. So if it's like 18.3 a measurement, we're using 18, things like that. So usually our square footages are a little bit on the lower side. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Only if it's being used as living space. So if not, we have what we call OBY, other buildings and yard items and stuff like that, and it has a different, so say a detached garage, it's just a detached garage, it's where a car sits. It's not a house, you're not living in it, it's ain't got a bathroom. It's got just a regular nominal price per foot based on what the type of property, what it is. So detached garage might be $24 a foot. Now, if it had maybe a finished attic or something above, it might have a little bit higher price per foot, little deal. But if it gets into its heated space, it's got a bathroom, kitchen, it's got a bedroom, things like that, where it can be considered a livable dwelling, then it's going to be considered as a second housing unit. The thing to think about with that, and it affects, I think the tax commissioner back there would have said, if you have a second dwelling on your property and you have an exemption, then you're not going to get that's going to sub out that second dwelling, and it's not going to be able to get an exemption because you can only get your exemption on one house on that property. So to have extra dwellings, then you're messing with your exemption also. Just keep that in mind. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Over the years, how the neighborhood changed and more crime and break-ins?
So that goes back to where I was answering here a minute ago. Yes, ma'am. It's all a factor in if we had neighborhoods at one time that there was just so many problems in. Those neighborhoods weren't coming back like all the other neighborhoods around weren't selling for the same. That's how we usually, what's buying and selling in that neighborhood is telling us kind of what's going on. So yeah, it is in an indirect, yes, ma'am. Anything else? Y'all can't make that easy now. Come on, I'm someone you're supposed to not like. See? So now, first of all, I think you've got a lot of HGTV channels or something. So the question was, like you outdoor living area, and you maybe put a cabana or something for maybe a pool bath and outdoor kitchen. Is that what we're kind of talking about? So those will kind of be all attached back to the house because they're still attached through the patios or something like that. So it would just kind of be an addition of numbers to the house, like you would add probably more than likely you put a half bath. So your house now might be a 3.5 versus a 3 bath. A few little things like that. It's not going to be a separate dwelling because it's not a separate unit. It's outside. It's just additional outdoor stuff to the house. So I'm pretty sure you got a lot of summer plans, it sounds like, going on at your house. And I do hope you see the personality I'm giving you now is who I am. I can't be too rigid. It's just not who I am. But I am serious about when I say it, and I'm serious about telling you, we mean it. Just talk to me. I'm going to talk to you. Whether or not you're yelling or smiling at me, I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to listen to you. And that's all I'm asking back. If you listen and I listen, we're on the same page. I'm sorry, someone else had said something, I thought. Emmett George. Yes, ma'am. Chief Appraiser here in Clayton. Yes, ma'am. You had something?
Question about the House bill and the state bill. Can you explain what, because I was looking at my property tax and it said that, I'm in Henry County, that the school board opted out of the assessment for either House bill 581.
And I'll kind of also let Commissioner Harris on this, since especially on Henry. I think the way the original House Bill 581 was written, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, it was opted more for the counties and the municipalities, and I don't know of a school board, I don't know in the state that actually, they all opted out, but it does not affect the county's ability to still do the floss and all the other things. I'm sorry, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm not sure this is on or not, but there were just a handful of school boards that did opt in. The vast majority of them opted out. I know in Henry County, as noted earlier, the county and all the cities did opt in, but they were never able to come to an agreement on what the distribution amounts would be, so it was never actually gone to referendum and passed. This year, with the new legislation, I think Senate Bill 33, that took the opt-out, opt-in language away, so school boards are now forced to actually opt in, if you will. And what that does, it kind of speaks to setting the valuation increases rather than whatever the market may have been, 8, 10, 12, 14% increases before. Now they're capped at whatever the CPI is, which I think this year is about 2.7, 2.8, something along those
something like
lines.
that, just below
So
3.
it's going to have a dramatic impact on the tax increases on the school board side, which in almost every jurisdiction represents about anywhere from 55 to 65% of your bill. So, and again, I'll touch about more of the questions anyone else should have later on.
Okay. Oh, see, I tried to sneak away. So I'll go back to it's the basic simple formula you'll see it in any DOR handbook is basically the digest value, the 40% of value of our numbers divided by the budget that the finance and the board of commissioners set. The final determination is between finance and board of commissioners where they want their budget for each year. And as Ms. Hudnall said, Clayton will be rolling theirs out this week. I think midweek, the budget, proposed budget will come out for this year. And so based on that, if the easiest way to describe it, let's say you've got $15 billion in assessed value, taxable value, and you need $300 million in a budget to make it work. Well, that says that you need a 15 mil establishment. I'm just using round number. Don't do the math because it ain't working. But right now, your county is at 14 and a half. Well, to make that budget, they're going to have to go to 15. Conversely, they can go the opposite way as far as if they were at 15 and a half and 15, they'll come down and all that. But that's the basically, I'll call it the elementary version of how the millage rate is calculated. The digest is back to our total taxable, or our total values of everything that my office does. So all exempt properties, all taxable properties, all personal, everything that's got a value, motor vehicles, heavy duty equipment. There's so many things on a digest item, but it's the total assessment of what's in that taxing district. So we have, I forget how many pages of our digest, because besides the county, we have a fire. We have each individual municipality. We got 7 of those. There's a couple tax allocation districts, a couple community improvement districts, things like that. There's all kinds of different things on a digest. So every taxable district has their own digest page for what's in that district. Yeah. No, that number needs to live and breathe as it is, because it starts then everybody else's information to get it right. Because if you start making that number just be stagnant, then you're not getting the right number. Everything's going to just not be a true number. It needs to be that that number, and then you need to have, see what the counties are doing with their budgets, see them where they're establishing their millage rates and things like that. But I always tell people, you really want to truly know what the total value of everything is so that the next lines are true. If not, you're not really getting true numbers.
Thank you very much. Mr. George will be here at the end, so we're going to have additional questions to answer at the end. We also want to be mindful of time. And I wanted to make sure I just go ahead and got started earlier, but I didn't introduce myself for those who don't know me. My name is Paris Hudnall. I am an entrepreneur. I am associate broker with eXp Realty. I am a broker with Paradise Realty Group, and I am the director of PR and Associate, which is my community arm of my company. I have several designations, as we call it, but niche down area for me when it comes to the market is tax services, property tax appeal, the strategies, working with the senior community as well. I also have worked with builders and being management. I also work with buyers in new construction. So those are some of my niche areas that I work in. Outside of that, I have a team that works in community real estate. Work in commercial real estate. I have a team that deals with the land side of it if somebody needs land. So we have a full team that can work anywhere in that area. But on the community side, we come out to the community and do various community events. We go to churches, we go to libraries. We just try to make sure we are sharing what we know that can assist the community in making informed decisions or what is hot topics going on in the community. The first step of the process, you heard from Mr. George, is you get your assessment notice. Assessment notice is going to have your value, say it's $200,000. Well, you get after your notice, if you decide to appeal, well, I'm going to talk about the appeal part at the end, some strategies when it comes to that, some things you need to look out for, because sometimes you don't need to appeal. Sometimes it's right on the money. It is what it is. But the person that collects your money is our commissioner. That's in Clayton County, Henry County, Fulton County, it does not matter. So they have a separate role than what Mr. George has. So our next speaker for today is Commissioner Michael Harris from Henry County. He's going to discuss with you what is the commissioner's role? What type of exemptions are available to you? I know they do vary per county, but he's going to give you some insight, and you are welcome definitely to ask him any additional questions as he comes to you and talk to you about the role of the tax commissioner and how you can pay your property taxes. You're welcome.
Well, officially, good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. It's almost like a little bit of a family reunion. See a lot of family faces in the crowd, so wonderful to see everyone and be in this beautiful facility. I'm in the midst of some back healing, so I'm going to use the chair. Hope y'all can forgive me on that. It's nice to be here. I'm not usually accustomed to being able to share a stage with the assessor, so this is really nice. It's for no other reason than, the rocks and stones and arrows get shared between us. So that kind of helps to kind of defer some of it. But it is a good, we do work in partnership. And, a lot of jurisdictions, can be some animus between them. I know in speaking with Mr. George and Danielle and I are good friends, Ms. Commissioner Smith, and in Henry County, myself and Mr. John Self, we work collaboratively each and every single day, particularly during the digest season. So, I've heard some horror stories in other jurisdictions, but, certainly, Henry County and here in Clayton County, you're certainly fortunate to have, offices that work well together and are mindful about working well together. So with that, I'm going to go through a couple things. Before I get started, there are a few handouts that we had out there. Hopefully everyone's gotten a copy of them. One is just simply property rights. We give these, we mail these out to every new property owner in Henry County. It kind of gives I think it has a requirement for every jurisdiction. But it's got a ton of information on there about what your rights are, responsibilities as a homeowner in regards to filing your taxes, things of that nature. So please get one of these. Feel free to pass it along. And I don't see any one this may apply to, but any friends of yours for senior exemptions here in the audience. Like I said, I don't see anybody in here today, but for friends of yours, no, ain't no way. I'd see your driver's license. I don't believe that. But this is specific, again, here in Henry County. And again, as Chief Appraiser mentioned, they're different. Exemptions differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So these are specific to Henry County. So a lot of the other information will be very generalized as much as possible. And one thing we do every year, we put out an annual report. Just kind of gives you an overall overview of kind of what we're doing here in the office, what we've accomplished in 2025, and some of the goals and objectives we have slated for 2026. So with that, we would jump into it. Okay, I can see it. Just a quick, brief history. We are one of four state constitutional officers, the tax commissioner's office, the sheriff, the clerk of superior court, and the probate court judge. So we have constitutional officers. So we're established by the Georgia Constitution as officers within Georgia. So the only way it can go away would have to be an act of the state legislature. Going through some of this, I found a quote. If you can go back real quick, there was an old quote back from 1895. It said, people, and this is from 1895, it kind of applies still today in some cases, people await the coming of the tax gatherer with the same resignation that they witness the approach of death. It is wise provision for the Constitution which enables them to elect and dismiss at pleasure the man or woman to whom rests the responsibility of keeping and proper distribution of public money. So in a lot of ways, things haven't changed in all those times. but it does speak to the fact that it is an elected position. So every 4 years, have to go back through the process of going through elections, going through that process. Next, please. So our roles, they include, and again, George just talked about it, making out and perfecting the digest. Again, the digest is coming up with that overall sum total of all the value of the property within a county. That is residential, commercial, property, industrial, motor vehicle stuff, utilities, all that encompasses what the digest includes. And again, that 40% assessed value is what actually the taxable value that makes up for there. Our role is, again, we bill, collect, and disperse our property taxes collected to the respective leveling authority, and that would be the state, the county, the Board of Education, any cities that we could maybe collect for. In Henry County, we collect for all four, and the Water Authority. Issuing executions for the purpose of collecting delinquent taxes. So there are some mechanisms that we have in place. Delinquent taxes, it's common practice to file a lien if you haven't paid your property taxes, and that simply protects the county's position. Should the property be sold, we still have a petition to make sure we can collect the appropriate tax. Just collecting the tax, that's it. Levies, seizures, and also tax sales. That is a mechanism. Most jurisdictions do them just about every month. Some do them just a couple times a year. We do ours typically, we do about 6 or 7 a year. First Tuesday of the month, we'll do a tax sale. I will tell you, me and my office, we do them just, again, about 6 or 7 a year. Before we get to the point of having a tax sale, we have gone through and exhausted every opportunity we can to contact the property owner and try to resolve it as best we can. We offer plans to kind of work through the issues. So the vast majority of the ones that we're actually selling, again, the last sale we had, it was 2 land properties, and we'd reached out to the owner. They had never responded back, so that's when we get into those situations. It's very, very seldom that we find ourselves in a situation where we're selling an occupied home. I can count on one hand the times we've had those instances. I did also want to say, I want this to be, as informational and informative for everyone. So as I'm going through them, if there's a question, please feel free to ask. And if you're like me, I can't remember stuff until the very end. All right, yes, sir. You didn't even wait a minute. What do you mean? If someone's being contacted and whether it's fraud or not? Yeah, great question. So we typically will contact by letter, certified letters will go out. If we have their email addresses, we'll send those out as well. So there will be at least 5 or 6 pieces of correspondence that will go prior to. If we have a phone number, we'll call. And I've called to speak to folks, and they can always call us back. So that's a way for them to be able to identify, make sure it is legitimate. Yep. Good question. I don't know the answer for that, but I will tell you this: I'm at the office every day, so you can always come in. I don't think they can actually replicate me. Prayerfully, that hasn't been the case yet, at least not in person. But yeah, you can certainly come by our office or any one of our offices and come back with your tax bill. Say, hey, I've got a question about this, or hey, I've received this notification. Is this legit? Is this something I'd like to have a conversation? And then you just meet with us in person. We welcome that all the time. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something I was going to touch on a little bit. There is a filing, it's called FANS. It's through Superior Court, and it is the Filing Activity Notification System. So if someone, we were still continuing to hear about it, a lot of deed fraud, or people are going through and trying to take people's deeds. So there's a process in place through the Superior Court to actually go through and set up and sign up for this FANS system, and you can make sure every time anyone ever does an inquiry about your property, you'd be notified. But for us, driver's license, that's what we require. It's interesting. People say, well, suppose someone wants to come in and pay my taxes. We've had that happen before. I'm like, if someone wants to come in and pay your taxes, they can pay the taxes. That does not give them ownership of the property. And that's what people sometimes don't always understand. We'll have delinquent properties, and some counties do it in different ways. All of our sales are judicial sales, so we go through the process. So you can't can't redeem a property unless you were the previous owner of the property. That's the only way. So you can't come back in and pay the delinquent taxes and think you have a right to the property. Not in Henry County, it doesn't work that way. Great questions. Again, something else, the tax offices, we also handle motor vehicles. So some years back, it was motor vehicles were, decades back, it was everything had to be done in Atlanta. And someone finally got the idea, so rather than having somebody kind of travel up from Brunswick, let's just have every county office set up a kind of serve as agents for the state. So we handle titling, registration renewals, things of that nature, all the motor vehicle transactions. We do that as agents of the state. So the software we use in our office is a state software. So the rules and regulations that govern how we do that, those are all state software. So that's one of our big roles. The one other thing we do in Henry County, next slide, please. We also handle occupational tax and business licenses, which is fairly unique. There's only a handful of jurisdictions within the state that falls onto it's not one of our fiduciary responsibilities as a tax commissioner, but it just kind of fell into the lap of predecessor's predecessor, and we've just kind of continued to kind of run with it. So business licenses, the process starts with us, and we coordinate with other departments, as it is. Next slide, please. We'll go to the next slide. I know we want to talk about property taxes. Occupational, again, for the business owners here, occupational, what we do is, again, not mandated by the state, but we do handle new business license applications, business license renewal, alcohol licensing. So if you have anyone wants to sell alcohol packaged or for drinks on premises, they'll start with our office as well. And again, we serve as a regulatory agency that we can actually, and we've gotten into situations where working in conjunction with the police department to shut down some businesses. We had a couple massage parlors that we found that there's illicit activity going on, so we were the ones kind of coordinated with the police department to go back and rescind their business license and shut the business down. So things like that are always nice to be able to kind of get into. Next slide. That's our brag slide. I'll get to that later on, but we can go to the next one. Property taxes. So, and again, what Mr. George spoke on, I'm going to reiterate a lot of what he said, kind of from our perspective, though. So for property taxes, again, we do work collaboratively with the Board of Commissioners, the board, all the cities, the Board of Education, the Water Authority. They have a millage that's shown on ours as well, and certainly with the Assessor's Office throughout the process. The Board of Commissioners, Board of Education, and the cities, they adopt their own respective budgets, and then from there, they make a determination of what their millage rate is going to be. Someone asked a little bit earlier about I think you're asking, was the digest a fixed number? It is not, but in some cases, a millage can be a fixed number. So in the case of Henry County, Henry County is actually capped at the number of mills they can charge. They're capped at 20 mills. Last year, for the first time in like 12 years, they reduced it from 20 mills to 19.8 mills. But that's something that the taxing authorities can control. Mr. George's point, the digest is a digest. It's the valuation of the property. But what that millage rate or tax rate, that's determined by the taxing authorities. So each individual taxing authority, the Board of Commissioners, they set their millage rate. Board of Education sets their millage rate. Cities set their millage rate. In Henry County, we also have 2 mills that have been assigned from the Water Authority that's been on for years, and it helps to pay for water infrastructure improvements, things of that nature. And you'll also see for the school, there is a bond as well, and those are for bonded school projects. So that amount is separate from, there's an M&O, which is maintenance and operations of the schools, and then there's a bond, and that pays for those projects that were bonded. That money goes towards simply paying back the bonds for those projects. So what we do in my office is we compile the information, we advertise and conduct hearings, we present our information to the Department of Revenue for approval for a collection order. So as we're going through this digest process, again, we're working hand in hand with the assessor's office. We have to compile the information, again, perfect the digest as we call it, making sure our numbers add up and align. And that's going through all the steps with the homestead exemptions, making sure we've captured everything that needs to be captured. And there's, I think 50 or 60 check marks and steps that we have to take along the process. So once we complete all those, we take all that information, send it to the state. State has to review it, And then once upon review, they come back and say, okay, everything was done in order, and they issue us an order to collect. So not until we receive that order to collect can we actually start sending bills out. And then we do all things like this. We go out and try to provide education and opportunities for people to ask questions. So that's a big part of what our office is really focused on is the public outreach portion. Next slide, please. Okay. I'm going in the wrong direction. So while taxes are typically due yearly on November 16th, and that's had always been the case and probably been the case for probably 20 plus years, last year was a little bit different. Because of some of the new legislation that was discussed earlier in 581 in particular, it set all of us back. I know our assessors were about 3 weeks back, got pushed back, and just being able to get the assessment notices out, which in turn set everything back as far as when our ability to be able to perfect the digest, our ability to be able to go ahead and, because once the digest is set and perfected, then we can go through the process of setting the millage rate. So that entire process got set back. For us, in the end, it was about 2 weeks. So rather than November 16th due date, we had to push our due date to December 1st, which is the first time it happened in quite some time. The key is that we can only submit the due date has to be at least 60 days from the time that the bills go out. So we're scrambling trying to get, and that means all the millage rates have to be set, all that has to be taken care of. We have to have the letter back from the state. So for us, it had to have everything back by October 1st in order for us to be able to set a December 1st deadline, which is critical because so many of the taxing agencies, the school board in particular, they really depend on those funds coming back in. A lot of taxing agencies and cities and counties, they'll have bonds that they'll have for 1 year, and they'll be due on December 31st. So they are extremely dependent on that revenue coming in by the end of the year. I will tell you there was a jurisdiction in the metro area. Their due date got pushed back a month and a half, and because of that, speaking with some of the folks, their tax commissioner and some of the folks from their Board of Education, they missed the Board of Education missed a payment to some of their employees because, again, rather than getting the tax revenues coming in December, it didn't come in until like late January, February. So again, it can have a dramatic impact if those timelines and deadlines are not passed. Again, we talked a little bit about this before. Tools used for delinquent tax collections: letters, emails, phone calls, tax liens, personal visits, typically for businesses only. If we have a business that is failing to collect or pay their taxes in a timely manner, us, staff member and or code enforcement will go out there and visit them and kind of help encourage them. Vehicle registration lockdown. So in some cases, we can actually put a hold on the vehicle registration until your other taxes are paid. Another mechanism we have in place. Bank levies in some cases. Again, talked about residential tax sales. And I always like to bring this up. This is probably the most gangster thing that I've ever seen in a government agency of all the gangster things I've seen. Anyone know what a till tap is? Familiar with that term? I wasn't either. I came in office in 2019. So I've been in about 7 years, kind of going through the process, going through the training, and this came up. And I said, so what's a till tap? I said, well, if you have a business, say a restaurant, bar, someone that owes back taxes, you have the authority to go into that business and have them open up their till, their cash drawer, and if they owe $800, you can go in and take that $800 out, write them a receipt, and walk away. And I was like, there's no way. And they're like, absolutely you can. It's certainly, obviously, with the backup of the sheriff or somebody. Thankfully, I've never had to go down that road as of yet, but I've had talked to some folks who have, and it can be an interesting adventure, for sure. We've consistently maintained a collection rate of about 98%, a little bit over. We're always collecting. So we're still collecting 2025 taxes. We're due December 1st, but we are constantly collecting, again, tax sales and delinquent taxes. We're constantly collecting. So right now, and you'll even see it indicated in our annual report, for 2024 taxes, I think we're at 90, a little bit over 98% that we've collected. And again, we're constantly trying to go back through and collect because it does. It's not. The purpose of it is, again, just always want to remind folks, it's for the ability to be able to provide the services that communities need: police, fire, parks and recreation, things of that nature. So that's the crux behind what we do, why we do what we do. Next slide, please. Okay, homestead exemptions. And this was discussed a little bit. I do just kind of want to go through a couple quick examples. Who should apply? If this is your primary residence in Henry County, you should apply, particularly this year. And I'll get into that, the reason for that in just a moment. But so again, in Henry County, again, they differ from Henry, Clayton, Fayette, and other places. But Henry County, if you're 62 years or older, so your basic homestead exemption, just for you own your home, you bought your home, it's your primary residence, you can file for your basic L1 exemption, and it's automatically a $15,000 deduction off of your assessed value. In Henry County at age 62, but again, that's just for your county taxes. It doesn't apply to your school taxes. At age 62, you begin getting an exemption for your school taxes. So at age 62, it's a $20,000 exemption amount. And at age 65, that goes up to $80,000. At age 68, it's $120,000 exemption. And at age 70, you no longer have to pay any school taxes, which is a big, big, big deal in Henry County. And again, that's based on your age on January 1st. So it's imperative, and it has a big source of how we can really generate a lot of cost savings from a tax standpoint. Yes. So, so the question was, you get the L1 and the L2. That is correct. So the L1 will stay in place, because again, that applies to your county taxes. So when you reach age 62, then the $20,000 exemption would apply to your school taxes. And once you have to, and you have to go back and reapply. So when you may have applied for you may have bought your home when you're 45 in Henry County, applied for your exemption. Once you reach the age of 62 by January 1st, you have to come back in and reapply one more time for that age exemption for the county. And then thereafter, it's automatically updated at age 65, age 68, and age 70. Just want to make sure you're checking your assessment notices. So once you said a deadline.
Say, for instance, that you were 62 last year, but this year you're 63.
Mm-hmm.
So do they go back, or do?
Right. So it's based on. So if you turn, so we've had people, and this is one of the heartbreaking. Well, I love getting out, being able to have the conversation. I'll have people that will come into a setting like this, and they'll be 73, never filed for their age exemption. So unfortunately, they can't go back to those previous years, but we can get them up and started at this point. In fact, I had a lady call me back. She just got her assessment notice and saw her tax bill was cut more than in half, or just based on having that exemption be added. So that's why having these conversations are so critical, and that's why I really applaud Paris for what she does and creating these settings. Yes, I see there's a couple. The lady in the green and then the gentleman in the white.
Hold on, wait. There's people online, so they try to hear.
With the homestead, if in 02 I did it, so that means I don't have to do it again until I reach 62.
That's correct.
So I should see savings from it.
When you reach age 62?
No, now, like when I first purchased my house.
Yes. So what you'll see is, and you're in Henry County or Henry County? Henry County is unique.
But I did it in 02.
Okay, you're in really good shape then. So with the county taxes in Henry County, it has something that's called a frozen provision. So when you purchase your house or when you file for your homestead, were approved in the year 2002. Well, actually, the provision went in place in 2004. In 2004, the Board of Commissioners went through a local referendum, and they passed what's called a frozen provision for all residents. So if you were approved for your homestead, whatever your value was in 2004 remains frozen. So if you bought your home, say you bought it in 2004 and it was valued at $200,000. Fast forward to today and it's now valued at $400,000. You are still taxed on the county side. Again, that's about that 40%. You're still taxed at that $200,000 value. So you'll see your exemption amount not be $15,000, but your exemption amount may be $80,000, because that's the saving. You have to increase your exemption to help offset that increase in the valuation. So that is a huge benefit of having homestead in Henry County in particular. So a lot of people asked when they did the House Bill 581 And again, what that did was, what they talked about was opting in or opted out. What that was going to do was going to cap how much your valuations could increase. Because again, we were seeing increases of, a couple years ago, 14, 15, 20% in some cases. So people would come up and say, hey, this sounds like it's a really good thing. What do you think? I said, it is a good thing if you don't have anything else in between. I said, so tell me this. It's either going to be, if you opt in and we go forward with the floating exemption, as it was called, that would cap it at the CPI, which is anywhere between 3 and 5% typically. So say it's 3%. So that would cap your valuation increase at 3%. So would you prefer to have your value increased by 3% or at 0%? I vote for 0%. But because the county passed it, we still had to make sure, we still had to go through and test every single parcel to make sure, which was more beneficial for the resident. The current, if they had homestead, so they're still frozen at the 2005 level, or if this floating CPI was going to be more beneficial. And in some cases, people who had just recently bought their home and they had, quite a few acres, in some cases that new floating exemption was more beneficial. I think in maybe 0.5% of the cases, but the vast majority of it for Henry County residents, it was the frozen provision, overtook it.
Does that affect how, in a way, with our taxes? That means like the tax on my house should not be as increasing as high amount like another county would then, right?
That's right. So case in point.
Fighting it may not even be beneficial to me because it's already going to be at a lower rate compared to where they're at.
So what you'll see on your assessment notice is, you'll see, and this is one of the big changes that they made, where before they used to have the valuation, here's your value, has gone up or down year over year, and Henry County has been steadily going up. But they'd also say, based on this, here's what we estimate your taxes to be. And that's what people would say, oh, well, this is crazy. My taxes are going up. I want to fight this. A lot of times those taxes were going up because while your county tax was fixed and frozen, your school tax was not. So if your property value went up 20%, your county taxes wouldn't have gone up because you're frozen because of your homestead. But the amount you paid, that 60% of the property tax that you pay from the school board, and again, I'm not bashing the school board. We need to fund our schools and make sure they're well funded. But that's the increase you were seeing. So a good example is the fact that, so if you have homestead in Henry County and you are over the age of 70, you should not see any increases, unless the only time you'd see an increase is if the Board of Commissioners increased the millage rate, which they did a couple of years ago for the first time in about 15 years. So I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon. But unless they change what that rate is, you shouldn't see any of an increase. Because again, it's a really simple formula. Value times millage rate or tax rate equals how much you tax. So, great question. Gentlemen, in the back.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to ask. Oh, that was good. What about disabled veteran for his homestead?
What are the...
Is there an age limit?
No, for disabled veterans?
Yes.
No, there's not an age limit, but if you have to have, so they require you go through the process of having a DD-214 and go through going through the VA office, and when you get your letter showing that you are 100% permanent and totally disabled, that's the key that the assessor's office will want to make sure they make the determination. Every year, that assessment, that exemption amount increases. I think this year it is $126,000. So, yeah, so for a disabled veteran, once you have that paperwork, so long as the effective date was prior to that April time frame, then you'd see an exemption of $126,000. And there's a exemption chart in your annual report, and it should tell you exactly what that amount is for year over year. But great question. Yes, ma'am.
If I were to reapply, like I applied for a homestead years ago and it's at a frozen rate.
Yep.
When I reapply at age 62, does it go off the new rate or does it still stay based off the first time that I applied for?
Yeah, so when you apply at 62, because again, it wasn't frozen for the school board. So if you froze it and your value was $200,000 and now you reach age 62 and your value is $400,000, you're getting the $20,000 off the assessed value from the current valuation for your school board. So so I'll say it's 40%. So a clean example is if your value is $300,000, your assessed value would be $120,000. So if at age 62, now you would have, so rather than being taxed at $120,000, you'd only be taxed at $100,000 because you'd get that additional $20,000 assessment off of your school taxes. All right, I'm gonna go through a couple other real quick. Again, who should apply? Disabled vets, surviving spouses, the requirements, application, driver's license, and so on. All homestead applications must be received by April 1st or no later than the end of the 45-day appeal period. This is a new provision, and Mr. George talked about this a little bit. It had always been April 1st. Now the new legislation has changed it to you can actually apply for your homestead exemption up until the last day of your assessment appeal notice. I think in Henry County it's July 13th. So it had always historically been April 1st. We also tell people April 1st got to have it in, but they've just changed it. Now they've extended it, so you do have a little more time to be able to apply for that. Completed applications turned into either the assessor's office or the tax commissioner's office. The assessor's office is responsible for making the final determination as a courtesy because we currently have two offices, Stockbridge and in McDonough. We also take the applications, and so people don't have to, if they live in Fairview or Ellenwood, they can drop off from their Stockbridge office. They don't have to drive all the way to McDonough. So we do that as a courtesy. Go to the next one, please. Okay, real quick, I'm just going to go through a quick example. Again, we talked about it before, because how property taxes are calculated. Assessed value minus exemptions times the millage rate equals taxes due. So in the first example, example one, the homesteaded property, we kind of keep clicking through. Homesteaded property with a fair market value of $300,000, 40% of that, it gives you a assessed value of $120,000. $120,000 minus that $15,000 basic homestead exemption gives you a taxable amount of $105,000. So for Henry County, that's $105,000 times our millage rate was for the county taxes, again, just the county, 15.733 or 0.015733 is mill rate. Gives you a county taxes of about $1,600 in county taxes, again, based on the standard L1 exemption. Example two of a non-homesteaded property with a fair market value, same fair market value, $300,000. Again, no homestead, so you're paying the full. Your assessed value is still $120,000, but again, no homestead exemption. Next slide. So you're taxed at that full $120,000 assessed value, which gives you a taxable county taxes of $1,800. So again, just on the base level, it's $236 difference, just from applying for getting approved from homestead versus not. Go to the next one. What happens to my tax bill if the value goes up, the millage rate remains the same, which has been the case in a lot of places. So property value increases from $300,000 to $360,000, about 20%. So 360 times that 40% gives you $144,000 assessed value. Times your millage rate, it's about $26.65 for non-homesteaded property. The increased amount of $377 on a non-homesteaded property if your value had gone up that 20%. But again, in Henry County, homesteaded properties would not see an increase in county property taxes due to the frozen provision if the base value for their property is less than the current value. So even if your value had gone up, which we in Henry County and most jurisdictions we've seen over the last couple of years, if your value went up because you were frozen for your county taxes, you would not have seen an increase in your county taxes, but you would have on your school taxes. So that's where you would have been hit at. Go next, please. And keep going. Age exemptions, again, it kind of goes to the age exemptions. Again, we talked a little bit about the frozen exemption, what that means. That's fine. You can keep going. All this information is in the annual report as well. And again, for sake of time, I'm just kind of going through them. Again, frozen exemption, we talked a little bit about that, what it means. It was enacted in 2004. And for those that have been in Henry County for a while, I've been here for about a little over 30 years. Everyone remember kind of what was going on in early 2000s when I think we were like the third or fourth fastest growing county in the nation, and property rates and property values were skyrocketing. And so what happened was a lot of our seniors, they were getting priced out of their homes. So now, they had a home that was valued at, back then, $100,000, and now all of a sudden values have shot up to $200,000-$300,000, and they're on a fixed income. They could not continue to pay that increase in value because their value went up, the tax rate stayed the same, millage rate stayed the same, but they're paying, hundreds of dollars more every year in property taxes. So that's when the Board of Commissioners in 2004 came up with the idea of setting up this frozen exemption. Go to the next one. Decreases over base year, owner will still pay. Yeah, so even if it does go down, so if you bought your home this year and your base year was last year, and it goes down over the next couple of years, which we are seeing where the values are kind of going like this, now it's kind of starting to go like this, we think, and flatten out quite a bit. So even if it goes down below, the value goes down below what your base value was, residents, it has to be more beneficial for the residents. So the residents will pay the lower of those two numbers. So it's always going to be more beneficial for the residents. So something to be mindful of. Yes, ma'am?
How do I know if mine's was frozen or at that cap that like now I want to do a homestead?
Right.
So I'm not sure.
Did you know if you filed for homestead? You're not sure if you filed for homestead in
I'm
2011?
not sure.
Are you in Henry or Clayton?
I'm in Henry.
Yeah, after this, let's talk.
Okay.
I give them information. We can kind of go through yours and find out. We can go back and look at yours specifically. And so you should have, because you bought in 2011, I promise you, your value has gone up quite substantially between then and now.
Well, say for instance, I bought my home when it was what is this called? Foreclosure, not
Yep.
foreclosure.
Yep.
Yeah, foreclosure.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I filed a homestead at that
Okay.
time.
We can check.
Okay.
Before we leave out, we can check. Yeah, so delinquent tax timeline. Again, talked a little bit about this earlier. We mail out taxes usually around end of August, beginning of September. Due dates around November 16th, typically, depending on everything else falling in line. We have to, due dates can't be less than 60 days prior to whenever we mail the tax bills out. So, and again, 5-phase, those are the liens. After we get beyond 30 days, typically, in our office, we'll wait at least 60 days before we even start having those conversations about filing. Go to the next one. So real quick, some of the legislative changes that were talked about. House Bill 33 mandates statewide floating exemption, or FLOSS, we talked about. So what this is everyone familiar with a SPLOST, Special Local Option Sales Tax? It's the 1 penny tax for road projects, things of that nature. Same concept, exact same concept. It can be either a half a cent or 1 cent. The county and the cities have to agree to what the distribution amounts would be, just like they do with SPLOST. But the difference being with SPLOST, they have to identify what the projects are going to be, whether it's building or road projects, and any money collected for the SPLOST has to go towards those projects. With the FLOSS, which flexible local option sales tax, any monies collected through a FLOSS has to go towards reducing your millage rate. So someone was asking a bunch of questions before about the millage rate and what is it, how is it determined? And Mr. George was correct in what he said is just based on what that digest divided by the budget. In Henry County, 1 millage equals ballpark around $12, $13 million is kind of what it calculates out at. So with the SPLOST, we did some rough calculations based on 1 cent collections. So if we were to collect $60 million in a year, that would equate to about somewhere between 4 and 5 mills. So if we're at 15 mills now, any money collected has to go towards reducing that millage rate. So if we collect $50, $60 million in FLOSS collections, that would have to go towards reducing from that 15.733 mills down to 12 or 11 mills. So again, you're reducing your tax rate, which is a big deal. The selling point, from county's perspectives is, you have people that are coming in from other jurisdictions outside of Henry or Clayton or Fayette or DeKalb or Fulton or Cobb that are buying. And so all that money, that 1 cent, goes towards helping to reduce our taxes. So but at the end of the day, it still has to be determined by the voters. So right now, what counties and cities they're going through the process of having those conversations to determine is it something they want to do. In Henry County, I believe they are going to pursue a FLOSS, but they still have to come up, how much does the county get? How much does each one of the cities get? And then that has to be brought before the voters. So, and if they get all that worked out, that'll come before the voters in November on a referendum. So that'll be part of the ballot in November. So the voters will still have a say to be able to say, whether or not they want to impose a self-imposed additional 1 cent tax. There's another provision that came out of that. It was called a L-host, which is a little bit different, where it would be similar. It would be a little bit different, where it only focused on the floss. It would lower the millage rate for everybody, residential and commercial and everyone. The L-host would only apply to those homesteaded residential properties. So it can certainly have a bigger impact. It's a 10-year process to kind of go through it. Same thing, be the 1 cent. So again, jurisdictions and counties are kind of viewing it right now because it just recently got passed. So they're trying to make a determination on what makes best sense for all of them. Bit of good news. So this past budget cycle at the state, they decided to come back and do another. They did this in 2023, about 3 years ago, Homestead Tax Relief Grant Program. Anybody remember that? And it was you got an $18,000 credit on your assessed value. So what you would see on your tax bill, you'd see a $18,000 assessed value as a credit. So, and it would go through 18,000 times your millage rate. I will tell you, in Henry County, it equated to about a $500 credit that was offered. So that's something that the state did again this year. So that is something that you should absolutely see on, and this is across the board, every jurisdiction, every county. You should all see that. It'll be labeled as HTRG, Homestead Tax Relief Grant, but it will only apply if you have your homestead in place. If you do not have your homestead, have not been approved for homestead, it will not apply to you. So if you haven't applied, so now's a great time to go back and check to make sure that you do have your homestead, because if you haven't, again, this is an additional $500 bump you're going to get for this year. So it's not every year, it's not guaranteed. They did it in 2003, and they get another surplus this year, so they decided to do it again this year. So HTRG, Homestead Tax Relief Grant, and by law, it'll have to be stated on your tax bill. You won't see it on your assessment notice, but you'll see it on your tax bill. One other quick thing, again, because we do also handle motor vehicles. Senate Bill 384 was passed this year, and this actually provides for for vehicle registration. Every year we have to go through and get our annual registration. It allows us to get a 5-year registration. And everybody's like, oh, that's great. I don't have to get emissions for 5 years. Nah, you still got to get your emissions every year. But you don't have to come back through. You still have to go back through and you still have to get your emissions every year. But you can play one decal. So rather than paying the $20, you'd pay $100. But it'd be good for 5 years and not have to go back through that process. But you still have to make sure you get your emissions every year. Otherwise, your registration would be canceled in the system, and you could get stopped for not having a valid registration. So it just saves you having to come back in our office every year, but you still do have to get your emissions. For those that are in, everybody here's in the metro area, so we're all functioning. Yep. Yeah, it's not mandated, it's just an option. Great question. Yes, sir.
How does that apply for people that have military decals?
The ones that you have for free?
Yes.
But even though you have it for free, you're still required to do the emissions, correct?
Yes.
That's a good question. I'll have to go back and double check and see if we can pull that. But because every year now you have to go back in and renew still and get the new.
Correct.
I think you could probably get the 5-year, and it'd be very similar. Still go ahead and you can get the 5-year, since it's going to be free for you anyway, but still have to go through your annual emissions check as well. But that's a good question. I'll find out, and Paris, I'll get you that information so you can post it as well. Yes, ma'am.
I know I need to go get it, but who's to say I did or didn't? Since we're
Great question. So when it's done, it's entered directly into the state system. Yeah, so it won't let us. So when you go to the office and they say, and they'll pull up your driver's license and see your vehicles, and they'll tell you haven't gotten your emission. And you can say, no, yes, I did. And they're like, no, you didn't. Not according to this system, you haven't. So as soon as they do it, it's automatically put in the system. So people usually bring their paperwork, but it's already in the system. So.
But what's the penalty?
So in this case, great question. If you get the 5-year and you haven't done your emissions, you'll get a notification saying your registration is going to be be suspended because you don't have a valid emissions on your registration. That's the catch.
You're going to jail,
Yeah.
in other words.
Yeah. That's right. If you got a brand new vehicle, the first couple of years, you don't have to get emissions, and after 20 years, you don't have to. You're exempt from emissions as well. And there are some senior exemptions, and that's also included in the handout that I provided.
One question regarding taxes. When they come out, I be trying to run to you guys, but of course they tell me, no, you can't pay us. You got to go through your mortgage company. So why?
So if you have a mortgage on it, the mortgage company pays the taxes. Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Every year around February or March, I'm sorry. The question was in reference to if you have a mortgage company and people will call up and say, hey, can I just go ahead and pay it myself? We say, well, no, it's being paid by your mortgage company. We'll get the payment from the mortgage company because they're making the payments. So what happens, a lot of people will come back and try to pay it, and then the mortgage company will pay it, and then we got to go back and if you're a refund back to the mortgage company typically, and it takes a big hassle. So if you have an escrow, the mortgage company will pay it. What happens every single year, and it happens to me, happens to probably a lot of people that are in here today, or sometime around February or January, February, you get a notification from your mortgage company saying, hey, your payment amount is going up. And people will call up and say, hey, what's going on? My payment amount is going up. Why'd you raise my taxes? And I said, we haven't even determined what taxes are going to be yet. Mortgage companies are simply making a determination, an estimate on what they think, historically, if our value's been going up by 10%, they're going to raise your mortgage by 10% to cover the cost, to make sure they meet all the escrow requirements. What they don't know, what your mortgage companies do not know, is what we have, again, every jurisdiction being different, what our exemptions are. So if this is the year you turn 62, or you're 62 as of January 1st, or 68, or 70, and you're no longer going to be paying that school tax, 60%, when you get that assessment notice, you want to send that to your mortgage company and say, hey, I'm not paying this amount this year because I have this exemption, so you want to charge me this. And again, that's between you and your mortgage company. I can't mandate that, but that's something to always be mindful of. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it. And again, I hope y'all appreciate this. Rather than going through the slides, I'd rather make sure people walk away with answers to their question. That's the big thing. And Paris, I apologize. I know I'm running long.
So you touched base on escrow. Can you possibly give information about payment towards escrow and how it can benefit people, just for those who may not know?
Yeah, I won't get too deep into that. That's kind of outside my purview, but it's.
We're going to talk about it.
Okay, you are okay. Good. Yeah. So it's from our perspective, we don't really delve so much into that. I will tell you, if you can, make sure you're studying your bill. I was paying PMI for the longest time, and then finally I was like, wait a second, what is PMI and why am I paying it? And until I actually inquired about how I get rid of it, was able to go through. So, but I know Ms. Hudno will cover that part of it. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Are there an exemption on investment property?
No. But I will tell you, depending on what it's investment for. So if you're talking about you having a property and you're renting out.
Rental property.
Yeah, for rental property, no, it's really viewed more as commercial property in that case. So again, the intent being that, for property homeowners, this is your primary domicile, that's where the advantage comes in. There's a balance, I will tell you, for every jurisdiction out there. The impact of the frozen provision in Henry County equates to about $40-50 million of savings for residents, but that's also unrealized revenues that the county is not getting for services, for police, for fire stations, things of that nature. That's money that's not coming to the county because we're providing that savings to residents, which is great. But there's been a lot of talk, particularly this year in Henry County. There's some financial challenges. We're seeing valuations dip down, go lower than what they've been in past years. So it's a bit of a struggle to go. How do we make up that gap? So there's been a lot of conversations in reference to that. But the short and simple question is no. I think that was it. Next one. I don't think there's much after that. Again, talked about this. This is the property tax credit notice that we talked about a little bit earlier about the $500 you should see this year. Go to the next one. Yeah, real quick, what's new for us? We are really excited. We've had 2 offices in Henry County for a number of years. We will be opening our 3rd branch office, first one in over 20 years in Locust Grove. It's right next, yeah, we're excited about it. You can go check our Instagram site. I think there's a picture of it in our annual report. It's almost done. We're going to be opening it sometime in October. We'll have the big ribbon cutting and everything else. It's got 3 drive-through lanes. So you can be able to go through drive. There's going to be a kiosk located there as well that you can, if you go through after hours, you can do your registration. Renewal is there. It's located right next to, everyone knows where the DDS building is, where you get your driver's license. Right next door to that, right there on Tanger Boulevard. So yeah, we're really excited about it. It's going to be a brand new facility. And really, we've needed a presence and a footprint in our southern part of our county for a long time. So really excited to get that one done. Those are the main things. The next one, I think that's probably it. That's it. Questions? And we go to the next one. There's my contact information. So that's my contact information. That's my direct line, y'all. And real talk, if I don't answer it, I'll call you back by the next day. That's we think great. And there's also my card should be out there somewhere. Same thing, my direct line, my email address on there. Hit me up. I've talked to some folks in here before. Hit me up. Let me know if you got questions. That's what we do. That's what we're here for. So the QR will take you directly to our website. All the information regarding everything that I talked about today and then some. But any other questions you may have. But seriously, take the picture. If you have any questions coming out of this, always feel free to shoot me an email, give me a call. Again, I will definitely call you back. Anything else? Thank you all very much. I really appreciate your time.
You all okay? Awesome. Great questions. You all have some great questions. Oh, thank you. Well, next, let's talk about appeals. I know we talk about taxes, my tax high, my value don't sit well with me. I want to appeal. So what do? Okay, next slide. You decide you want to appeal. So what's now? Next slide. You have 45 days, as they stated, once your notice goes out. So at the top, it will indicate the date that notice was sent. You have 45 days from there to decide if you're going to appeal. Once you decide you're going to appeal, you have to decide on what grounds you want to appeal on. So you have grounds to appeal of value, uniformity, taxability, exemption denial. Most counties allow you to appeal in person. As far as dropping off the information, now a lot of them have portals online. So it depends on your county and how advanced they are with the technology of how you can do your appeal. Next slide. Step 1. As Mr. Emmett has stated, your notice is going to look different. It's just bottom line, it's going to be different. It was different last year. They changed it again this year. Talk to the legislation about that. So we have the deadline. That's the first thing you want to check. It's your deadline. Your name, believe it or not, sometimes the simplest thing is where the error comes in. Spelling of your name. It's just like when people sign up for stuff and you be like, I can't read this. But make sure your name is spelled correctly. Next, you want to make sure the contact number is going to be on there for your appraiser. A lot of that little fine print, a lot of people don't read it. And you say, who do I call? The contact number is going to be on there for the appraiser. Next, their name is going to be on there. That person that you should call, their name and phone number will be on there. Next, you want to make sure you look at your value for that year. So if the value for the year says, like example here, 2025 it was $102,300. 2026 says $168. That's what you're going to decide. Do I agree with the $168? Now, most of the time, most of us are going to say no. But, when people say how much you want to pay, usually people say for free or the low. And that's normal. I mean, it's normal. So, but you want to make sure that basic things are in place and are accurate. Someone asked a question about checking for square footage and things like that. You can go on to the tax assessor's website and double check the square footage of your home, make sure the bed, bathroom correct. As a real estate professional, I can tell you half of the time it's wrong when I pull up the tax records. Someone wants to sell their home or I'm doing some comparables. A lot of times, I don't care if it's off about 100 feet. It's wrong. So go in, double check, make sure it's right. My home, they have my home listed as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I have a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. Square footage is also incorrect on there. So just the basic information, you want to make sure you check that. What will be different, as he stated, please don't get confused with this number down here and get happy, because it is just what your exemptions add up to be for our savings. It is going to be people who are going to think that this is what their taxes amount is. God forbid if this says $500. They'll be like, oh, I just got to pay $500. No, look in this box. This is what all the exemptions you have. So if you have homestead exemption, if you're 65 and have an exemption, if you're a vet and have an exemption, if you're 100% disabled and have an exemption, whatever your exemptions are should be located here in this box. This is the savings. So your key thing when you get this assessment notice, once you look at it and make sure all your pertinent information is correct, is you're looking at this value. So once we look at the value, next slide, understanding the different types of appeal. Most people are going to appeal on value and uniformity to the community. A lot of question was about rundown homes, rental homes, things like that. Usually, if your value is set $300,000, you think your value should be $250,000. Uniformity to the community. Most of the homes in your community is 20 years old. They came in the community, bought some vacant land, and now you have maybe another 15 homes that is 5 years old. You think, well, it looks like they're gauging my value based on the new construction or the newer homes. Or you may have some homes in the community that has been fully renovated. So those things comes under uniformity and a value. So most of the time when they ask you, when you fill out the form, what are you appealing under? Some people choose one. If it's room to put two, you can put two. It's not a right or wrong, but most people are doing it based on value. But a lot of times the uniformity does have a play in it as well. As he stated, when you're saying, looking at the whole totality of the community. Step 3, well, continuation. You got taxable appeals and exemption appeal. I don't see a lot of this. The taxable appeal is because they may have you classified wrong or taxed incorrectly. I don't see a lot of that in my experience. Also, exemption appeal, that's if your exemption is not correct. It's not that if you don't have it because you didn't file, not that. That if it has been coded incorrect. That would be at the tax commissioner's office where you would get that information from. So under those 4 grounds, that's what you decide how you're going to file your appeal. So for example's sake, we're going to file on the value and uniformity. Next slide. These are the things that you can do. I can do them for you, yes, but I'm going to talk to you about these are the things that you can do. You can get your comparables based on your home, comparables in your area. Now, some communities, you can usually find some comparables within a mile. Depending on where you live, especially if you live up farther end of Terra Boulevard going up towards Lovejoy, or if you live deep in Henry County, I call it deep Henry County, by the square or further out, you may have to go a little further than a mile out to find some comparables, but most of the time within a mile you can find some. In some cases, some people identify their comparable based on elementary school because usually that's that cluster. So you find your comparables. You want to find something close in age, square footage, bed, bath, all those things. If you have some deferred maintenance or some issues at home, so we had a storm come through, you got some hail damage, take pictures of the roof. Inside, you needed to paint and you had a leak, but you just haven't done it. Take some pictures. I had a sinkhole in my yard. I've been in my home a long time. They used to bury trash, so the ground started sinking. I took some pictures and got an estimate. Take pictures. If you can get an estimate, it's better because it helps prove your case. So you want to gather all of that documentation. Review your property records, like as we stated, make sure it's square. So sometimes they may have you at 1,500 square feet, but say if you 1,000 square feet, that's a big difference. So you want to make sure you review your property records, make sure they're accurate. Yes, ma'am.
Documentation, and you're supposed to be collecting evidence to support your appeal, and you're trying to lower the tax, right? That's what you're saying, correct?
If you are deciding to file an appeal based on you feel like the value is too high, then you're collecting comparables to your home. Most of the time, you're going to find some comparables. Sometimes when you start collecting them, you may find that, okay, they say this worth $200,000. Based on all these comparables, yeah, it's probably about right 200.
So-
well, if you start looking and you find homes similar to yours that is, say, 175, 180, 190, those are the homes, the comparables that you want to have with you.
So you're living in this house, and you have roof damage, water that you don't repair, and then you could use that at
Yes,
your
ma'am.
advantage?
And I'm gonna give you a quick example. I have filed appeal twice. I'm not telling you all anything that I haven't done or seen. And normally I don't tell people, but I also sit on the tax assessor's board for Clayton County. But I'm telling you what I've gone through. I'm telling you what I've helped people with. I had a sinkhole. I took pictures of the sinkhole. Got a price for the sinkhole. Okay? So with that, if you have roof damage, you have some deferred maintenance that is bringing down the value of your home. You not saying you're not going to ever get it repaired, but based on the $200,000, really your home probably needs about $10,000 worth of work, or $15,000. So your home may be in fair or average condition. They may have you at $200,000 because your home they are looking at your home as being in good condition. No roof damage, no deferred maintenance, no paint job needed. They don't know because they haven't been inside. That's your job to prove your case. No, I'm just saying that's what I tell people.
I just feel you living in this house, you're going to maintain the house. I mean,
It happens every day.
that you could
If that
not
mortgage is
maintain your house.
$2,000 and you lose your job, you trying to pay the $2,000, you ain't worried about paying
Right, no, I
being the
know.
roof cave in.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's something that just happened, then fine, you could say, all right, the roof
When,
just caved in.
but no, sometimes it's not even just happening like you just said. It's sometimes deferred maintenance that people say, well, you know, them little pet projects we have. I got to paint. I'm going to change out the locks. I get to it. It's the pet project. Then something comes up, and I get to it. We call basic things deferred maintenance. You know, I need to paint the outside or pressure wash the outside. I get to it. Those type of things. If you just didn't pressure wash your house, it's dirty, no. But if you're outside and you have brick that are splitting, separating, it looks like you might have some selling issues, then you need to get someone out there and give you an estimate on that. Not saying you're not going to get it repaired, but it's doing this appeal process. But you said my house is $200,000 and it's in good condition. Really, it's in the average condition. So it's going to cost me $15,000 to get it fixed. Also, additional supporting documents you might have had. You might have refinanced, and you may have the appraisal from the mortgage company. You might have a private appraisal done. You might have an insurance claim. You know, roof repair or whatever storm came through. They usually do appraisal as well if you have a mortgage. All those supporting documents in your favor, you're going to take with you. If you look at it and it lines up with what they have, then it's okay. That's step number 3. Once you get your documents, next slide. So building a property tax appraisal example, $200,000. You pull 3 comparables, 150, 175, 200,000. 200,000 is great condition, great. Second comparable, 175, is average condition. You know, you've been wear and tear, but it's in average condition. 150, it really needs some work done. You fall in the middle, but you also have some roof repair for 10, sinkhole repair is 5. You might have homestead exemption on there as well. So you say, well, I believe I'm really right in the middle because my home is not in great condition. I'm maybe right at 175. So that is what you're going to prepare your evidence to show. Them comparables, them estimates you have for the repairs, if you have any. You may not have any, but your comparables could do all the talking for you as well. You don't have to have any other deferred maintenance. But you're going to present all that evidence and say, BOE, Board of Equalization, I feel my value is 175. You have it at 200. Here's my evidence. Next slide. The 4 ways you can appeal your property tax, most residential homeowners do the County Board of Equalization, the BOE. The BOE is volunteer people that sits on that board. A lot of times they do ask people who may have some appraisal or real estate experience to sit on the board, but they are people who volunteer to sit on that board. They do have to go through an application process. They go through training and all of that as well. You have hearing officers, arbitration, Superior Court appeal. Next slide. The BOE, good thing about the BOE is once you gather your documentation, within those 45 days, you fill out your form, they're going to send you a hearing notice. You're going to get your notice. If you can attend, great. If you need to reschedule, they will reschedule for you. Usually you receive a decision that day. They'll present you the decision. You sign off on a form you just accept. They'll send you a copy in the mail, but you will also leave that day knowing what the answer is. Either they agree with you, sometimes they meet in the middle. You said 175, they may come back and say 190 or 180, but you have a decision. Usually in your hearing, you'll also have the person that's your tax appraiser that I told you on your assessment notice, they will be there with you as well. Now, they present the case for the county, though. Don't get it mixed up. Now, they talking for the county. You talking for you. But they will be there to present any evidence they have. And in my experience, sometimes you end up with more evidence than they have. It's your home, for one. But sometimes you go a little deeper with the research than what they do. Next slide. Hearing officer appeal. Usually this is people who don't have a homestead exemption and properties over $500,000. When you do this, usually it's commercial investment property, then you are talking to an actually certified licensed appraiser if you want to go this route. Like I said, most residential are going through BOE. Next slide. Arbitration. You just can't agree. You decide you want to go to arbitration. Now, money is involved in that, of course, if you're talking the legal system, so you have to decide, if that's what you want to do, you will have to get a licensed appraisal done. Appraisal can run you anywhere from, on the lower end, $450, $500 to $1,500, $2,000 or more, depends on the size of the home, etc. Things that goes into that. But it is an option if you feel you need to go that route. Next slide. Now you're really mad. Superior Court appeal. You're like, I still don't agree. So you decide you want to go to Superior Court. You can. Now, I've only had one experience with that. I had a lady last year. She came to me for help. She's in social circle. It was just a lot going on, I just say that. And she decided she wanted to file and go to Superior Court. But she really didn't have a lot of evidence. She knew what was wrong with her home. It was a lot of deferred maintenance. But putting it together was her issue, and they just kind of was giving her a runaround. Once she filed and decided to go to Superior Court, they called her back. The Tax Assessors Board called her back. They decided to give her a hearing date. I put together her data for her. I pulled the comparables. I have the assessment notice that they provided her. She sent me pictures of all the deferred maintenance. They was estimated around $750 for her home. And truly about $550 with the deferred maintenance where it should have been. With that being said, though, comparables in the area, most of everything was above average of what her home condition was. It either was excellent, good, or a little even above average. I gave her my estimate and recommendation of, I said, well, I don't think you're going to get to 500 and something from 7. Shoot for anywhere between 6 and 650. She came back, she got 625. And it was because we packaged it all together for her, and we laid it out. You can just give them, it's like you're going into a meeting, give them all a copy. Because she was really nervous. I said, you can give them all copies. Here goes some talking points for you. and they would decide. She had more evidence than what her tax assessor had in the meeting. Because what I was able to do, I had the comparables, but I could go in and I could see exactly why that house was priced where it was priced, the condition the home was in, any upgrades was done, how much closing costs was paid, all those other things that I could see to help me come up with her analysis for her property. But needless to say, that's the only time I've experienced this case, and like I said, they pulled it back when they saw she was serious. And most people don't go this route. Like I said, usually you can talk to even your tax assessor and get it resolved. You said 200, they may say, okay, we'll go to 190. They say 200, you may want 175. They say, okay, we'll do 180. You come to agreement. You may never have to go to the Board of Equalization. Have a conversation. And if you think that you just can't come to agreement, then you move on to the Board of Equalization. Next slide. This is your timeline. Assessments notice will go out between May and July 1st. They have to be out by July 1st. Henry County they own their job. They have already sent theirs out. Clayton County will be going out towards the latter part of this month. But whatever that date is on that notice, that's 45 days. That's when your clock starts ticking. Once the clock starts ticking, you decide you're going to file the appeal in that 45 days. Then the BOE should notify you and send you a letter to appear within 180 days. From that point, you will get a decision most of the time while you're there, but then they will have 10 days to put it in the mail to you as well. Then your final bill comes out. If you fall into the time period where the bills are coming out, my recommendation is ask your tax commissioner to just tax you 100%. Whatever it is, not like, well, maybe part of it. Because a lot of times if you decide you don't want to pay maybe part, then you end up getting that final bill after you have gone through the appeal process. You still have a balance. And I'd rather for them to cut your check back. Won't you do that?
Yeah, so just real quick, I'm glad you brought this up. So if in that appeal period, typically what we'll do is we'll send out an 85% bill. So if it's in appeal, you've appealed it, and it's going through appeal, when it comes time for us to send out the final bills, we'll send out an 85% of whatever that original amount was. For the purpose of, we prefer not to have to write the refund check, but it's absolutely within your right to ask for that 100% check up front, and then we'd write you the check. But from our standpoint, we just, know if you've appealed it, that bill, it may come at 85%. So people get their appeal bill like, oh, this is great, I'll pay this. But look, make sure you read it, because it will have to say this is an appeal bill and represents 85%. It is a whole lot cleaner from your perspective if you do it at 100% and just wait for the refund if you want to do that.
You all know how we are, just gonna pay the 100% and just get that credit back on the back end. I always recommend that, and I recommend when you're filing for your exemption, once you hit 65, if your birthday is tomorrow, go in and still you can file. When it goes into play, if it's next year, a lot of times people forget and say, I'll go next year, top of the year, and they forget. So sometimes, when something on your mind, you just go and take care of it. It's in place and it's just going to kick in. So this is your timeline. When you get your notice for your final bill, if you pay it directly, you go into the office, or if they have pay online, like a lot of counties do, that's what you do. If you pay it through your mortgage company. Now, I'm going to say something about these mortgage companies. It's great that they collect your taxes and distribute them. But the problem falls in line, we don't pay attention. If you file an appeal, and say your escrow account is supposed to have $3,000 for the whole year. You file an appeal. You win the appeal. Once they calculate it all, your insurance, say it didn't change. Your tax now, with your taxes and insurance and your escrow, say you're supposed to have $2,000. The mortgage company doesn't know that. That's your job to let them know. And I'm telling you about this is a rabbit hole I went down for 5 years because of the $500. A lot of people. Then I started helping and talking to other people. So with that being said, if your escrow account, however much you're supposed to have in your escrow account, if you file an appeal, Make sure once that appeal is done, if you win, you need to make sure you call and ask your mortgage company to do another escrow analysis on your escrow account. Most of them do their analysis early part of the year, like May, June. Then they send you out and a notice and let you know if your escrow is short, if your mortgage is going up, or if it's going down. Well, we haven't even gotten a budget yet. We don't know what the millage rate is. They don't keep up with all of that. So with that being said, once you go through this process, even if you don't file an appeal, if the millage rates change and your taxes change, you have to pay attention to your escrow account with your mortgage company. I recommend they send you out a notice, and usually it comes out in June. They do their analysis. I recommend at the end of the year, you ask them to do another updated escrow analysis. Because a lot of times, they're not going to change it. I had to get a refund back last year. I filed an appeal. That was my second year filing 2 years straight. I won, though. And I told them that I sent them a copy of the updated statement of what my taxes was going to be. How about they still paid the wrong amount? If I wouldn't have caught it, they wouldn't have known. So you have to call and ask them and put that in place when it comes. It's great to pay it through them. It is. You know, because I see people scrambling, that it's like Christmas, that tax is coming every year, same time, but people scrambling trying to get the funds together. So if you're paying it through your mortgage, just pay attention to your escrow account. And I'm going to talk about something else when it comes to that escrow account at the end. Even though when people say they're giving us a couple dollars back, everything comes with a price if you're not paying attention. So, but just make sure you ask them for updated escrow analysis. That's if you don't file the appeal, but say still taxes or anything in your county has changed. Next slide. So checklist, this again, your checklist for your appeal process. Bring in your assessment notice, your comparables, property photos, repair estimates, any other written summaries or information you want to provide to the Equalization Board. How many people sits on the board is varies per county. In Clayton, I think we have 3. They rotate out. It's 3, but they rotate. So, but it doesn't matter if it's 10. You just want to have your presentation and your information together. Next slide. Okay, it was House Bill 1000. I think that's what the governor signed. But it still comes down to the credit that Commissioner Harris was saying we was going to receive. Married, joint, head of household, how much? This right here got a lot of people in trouble when we got it a few years back. Because what happened, I know in Clayton County, we had a lower millage rate. We got the credit on top of it. So everybody was looking good when they got the assessment notice and when they got the tax bill. Well, fast forward, when your regular tax kicked back in, people was like, what's going on? Then in Clayton County, we had a millage rate hike on top of it. So if your tax bill that year came out to be $1,500, within a year plus, you might be at $2,500. And people are like, what is going on? I can't afford this. And your escrow account was short because your lender does not keep up with what's going on in your local municipality. They don't know nothing about the $500 or the $250 credit. They know nothing about that. So that's why you have to make sure you are understanding how that is working into your escrow account. Well, a lot of people, escrow account was short. Millage rate goes into play. Your homeowner's insurance might have went up within a year. Usually it goes up, if not every year, every other year. So all those factors made a perfect storm where you got the $250, $500, or $375, but you're in a deficit in your escrow account, and your taxes has gone up. Not realizing that because of the credit, because maybe the millage rate changed, it was good times, but now the good times is over with. It took me 4 to 5 years to get Wells Fargo to get my stuff together. I knew more than they knew. It was a rabbit hole. It was a rabbit hole because they was not seeing what I saw. They didn't know anything about what happened a few years ago when Governor Kemp gave us the credit. So my stuff was off. for me, it wasn't off by much because I do put extra in an escrow account. Don't buy Starbucks, put an extra in the escrow account. But it took me 5 years to get mine together. So just remember, whenever you get, if it's nice, but understand how it's going to affect your numbers when it comes down to it. I'd rather for you not give it to me, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes it's like when you got a sale. I don't want the sale. Tell me, Verizon said its sale price is $30 for the phone, and then after a year, it goes to $400 a month for the phone. So sometimes I just rather not have the credit. So I just pay you the $400. I know if I can pay you today, I can always pay you the same amount. But you just got to know how this is going to affect your escrow account and your mortgage. That is one of the biggest things I saw a lot of. So the shortage, property tax maybe $400, you get the credit. It took people about 2 to 3 years to really figure out what was going on. So it actually can offset you, and you want to make sure you, like I said, call your mortgage company, ask for an updated escrow analysis. If you get the $400 or $500 or however amount it is, just maybe put it over in your escrow account. Just put it in the escrow account, or at least put half in the escrow account. Because it definitely can have you at a shortage and a disadvantage. Any questions so far? Next slide. Questions? So everyone knows how to file their appeal if they're going to appeal. Your home is $200,000. The value says $200,000, and your area says the homes are worth $185,000, and you know what you're going to do to file your appeal. How you're going to go about what you're going to need. Well, you can. I got 2 things I wanted you to. This right here is a QR code. If you scan that, it goes to our Google for our review. Tell us how we're doing, so we'll know, as well as other people when they're looking for someone to service them, they would know how the PR and Associates in Paris Hutton are doing with their classes. Real estate, I do sell real estate too. I know most people see me out in the community. I do work with buyers and sellers and investors as well. So that is my first thing I want you guys to do. Second thing I want you all to do, keep an eye on your bill. I find when I talk to people, the assessment notice comes in the mail and they just throw it to the side and they said they're going to open it up later. Go ahead and open it up and look at it. Even if you have to go back to it and just let it digest, but go ahead, open it up and look at it so you at least see what they saying your value is. Yes, ma'am.
I do the QR code. It's taking us to. It's not taking us to.
It's not?
Information. No, I'll do it again.
Oh, I don't know who that is. Go if you Google PR and Associates. PR and the little and sign and Associates. Yes, ma'am.
I appealed my Clayton County taxes, and true to everything that you just said, I won, and I was locked in for 3 years. Is that all the counties that do that?
For 3 years?
Yeah.
I believe all of them are set for 3 years, frozen for 3 years.
Yeah, I think there were some changes where it had always been, historically been 3 years, but I think new legislation said they'll lock it if you win. Before, it was such that if you appealed, automatically you were frozen. But now I believe the new legislation is such that it'll only freeze it for that amount of time if you win, I believe.
And I want to add a note to that. If you win and they freeze it for 3 years and you decide to go back and appeal again, it unfreezes it. I appealed in 2024. It was frozen for 3 years. I decided to appeal again in 2025. So it unfrozen whatever I had frozen in 2024. Grace to God, I won again in 2025, so I'm frozen for 2025 and for the 3 years. This right here is, now this QR code works. This one right here will take you to PR Appeal Services. That is the service that we do have. If you want, you're like, okay, I think I know how to do it, I can do it, but I don't want to do it. You know, you may just not want to do it. But it will take you to PR Appeal Services, Also, you have a flyer in the booklets we gave out. Yes, that's it. Hold it up again so everybody can see. Yes, that's it. So you have a flyer, so you still have a reminder. Share it with someone. Call me if you have questions. I'm fine with that. Call me if you have any questions. Also, I put a flyer in your booklet that has FANS. FANS is the website you go to register your property for if anybody tries to change your deed, add your name, do anything. Go to that website, take you 5 minutes or less, and register your home. So if anything happens, they will send you a notification. That's one of the biggest things that has come and put into play because of fraud. People think it's hard, but it's really easy, signing and getting deed to someone's home. So I put a flyer in there. It has the instructions and the website for you to go to. Any additional questions? You're more than welcome. Well, that's it, you guys. Thank you all.
Y'all, if she's having anything going on, please sign in, come, just follow her, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.